Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no theologian, I'm no historian, so I can't be, I can't, I'm not in the position to be drawing, connections. But yeah, in that
Yeah.
church during that time, there was also like the Chinese ministries, and it's pretty fascinating because they were even showing us how during ancient China, like we're talking about super ancient China, how they saw God in ancient China as well. Like I was like, wow, yeah, it was it's very amazing.
Well, how
So
does it influence the work you do now?
right,
Circling
so
back around to
yeah, sorry,
where
I
you
took you,
are.
I took you a little bit like up to the clouds, right? Now
Well,
we're
that's what
coming
I
back.
wanted to do with this, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't, and we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh Rephun, and if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes.
My guest today on Truth Tastes Funny is Yan Huang, and Yan is known as the Pivotal Healer. She's a 15-year cancer-free survivor, certified women's integrative health and QI movement practitioner. She guides women over 30 to flow more into their, what she calls the rest, digest, manifest selves. We're going to talk all about what she does as the pivotal healer, but we really are going to start with her life story because it takes some turns and it takes some twists that I think will be really instructive and lead us to a really, really interesting conclusion. I don't know how the conclusion will go, but because I know the points of your story, Yan, that we're going to hit on, I know that it's going to be a really interesting one. So welcome to Truth Tastes Funny.
thank you so much for having me on the show, Hersh. Yes, yeah. Hi, listeners. My name is Yan, or actually, my last name is actually Huang, but I understand people in the US might not get used to, pronouncing that Huang. No problem.
Yes.
And yeah,
Yan
so here I
Huang.
am, and it's actually not QI, but T, like energy in Mandarin, T. Like Tai
Okay.
Chi, but this is more of the T. Yeah.
Tea
So
movement.
yeah, T movement,
Okay.
Qigong, T movement. Yep.
Great. Well. Okay. So Yan Huang, is that right? Is that better?
All right. I'll
Did
say
I
that's
mess it
better.
up?
Yeah, we have a bit of, the H, it has that a little bit of breath out. So it's like Huang,
Huang.
Huang. Almost that close.
Almost.
Close enough. Way
But
much better.
it would take time for me to learn, but it's worth it. I'll try to learn. Okay. Well, all right. So let's start with your childhood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood, because you've mentioned childhood malaise.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting, starting point. So
Right.
tell me about growing up.
Yeah, so I grew up in my family is small, like my nuclear family is just family of four, but I grew up with my cousins and my aunts. So in many ways, I always felt like I grew up in a big family. So like any typical Asian middle class Singaporean family, that's very common as well. And in my generation, so when I mean my generation, I meant like my brother, my cousin's generation. I'm the only female in the family. I mean, in that generation. So, and the rest are all like boys. So I kind of grew up, you know how they say you either grow up to be the same or the exact opposite of
Right.
The environment around you. So for me, I grew up to be a little bit tomboyish, and it's like always feeling like, oh, why is it that my brother, my cousins, my male cousins get to do all that stuff? I also want to join in and kind of,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so talking about childhood malaise, so I wasn't, I don't really grow up to be like super sporty or active. mainly because I have a lot of I call it meliasis. Meliasis because they aren't well, the kind of how do I say, the kind of illnesses and diseases that I had growing up wasn't that bad that I had to be hospitalized, but yet
Okay.
it was considered pretty chronic. So a few meliasis that I have that I remembered vividly is having very sensitive skin issues, skin allergies, to the point that, you know, I get how do I say, like I would get all this rash and itchy itchy stuff around my skin, as well as in the intimate parts of me as a young girl as well. And so that's mainly one. The second one would be on the respiratory system, the lungs. So I'm always like very susceptible to cough, not so much of flu, but a lot of coughing. And it was at one point it got pretty bad. And then when I went to see the Western doctor or the medical doctor, they felt that I wasn't serious enough, or rather my cough wasn't serious enough to so-called diagnose me as asthmatic. So I
Okay.
think that was a blessing in disguise, because later on my mom and my late grandma felt that, you know, something needs to be done, and they brought me to see our, you know, family Chinese physician. And over the next 8 years or so, a lot of lifestyle changes to work around my nutrition, as well as a lot of I call it the bitter herb formula. Yeah,
Yeah.
for the next 8 to 9 years, until I was around 13. And just one of those days, all of a sudden, you know, like, I don't know, I just stopped coughing.
Yeah.
You know, I got really, really strong and robust. I don't remember the last time I actually have those phlegmy cough or super dry cough, or those cough where you feel your lungs get constricted, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, with this whole COVID thing, I'm sure some of you guys can understand, you know, how that, yeah, that really felt. But yeah, so I almost really don't remember the last time I had cough, unless I don't take care of my, you know, like I call it my sleep pattern or my stress level. But I
Yeah.
almost don't remember falling sick. Yeah, so I think mainly that's mainly that too. So because of the skin you know, allergies, as well as the what do you call it, as well as the coughing thing, the respiratory thing, so that prevented me being so-called like the typical growing up child, you know, playing around outdoors, or, you know, going for lots of physical activities, because that always triggers a lot of you know, basically my body can't keep up with what
Right.
I wanted to do.
Well,
Yeah.
that must have been hard also with your brothers and cousins, because you were competing. You were the girl who was trying to, you know, wanting to be competitive probably with them, but physically your health wasn't strong enough, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say it was. That's why I say is that's why I felt that I call it meliasis, because it's kind of like chronic. Like I noticed that it gets triggered if I eat certain food, or if I were to do certain activities. But it wasn't debilitating to the point that I need
Yes.
to go to the hospital. So it's like I don't want to put things. So one thing that I learned along, you know, over the years, is that the old way of looking at diseases as black and white, like extreme form, it's very outdated. We should be looking
Yeah.
at, or rather, it's better to look at our body showing symptoms as a spectrum. You know, we are all a spectrum. It's just like our weight and our height. No one is like a perfect 50.0 and, you know, a perfect 80.0. It's all a spectrum.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that's that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I won't say I'm super competitive. Maybe a little bit.
Right. Right. Okay. So you were a little bit competitive. Now you mentioned growing up in going to a same-sex school.
Hmm.
What was notable about that for you?
Ooh, right. So that was yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, just like on top of, I would say for me, mostly would be self-esteem.
Hmm.
I think when I look back, I think there was a lot of like that little bit of like, yeah, you sort of like compare yourself against, you know, like others, about whether is it the way how, mostly on the aesthetic, you know, you know, how with girls is you're changing, we're all changing, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, aesthetic speaking. And not only that, also because of the so-called less physical side of me growing up, I tend to lean towards the on the plus side of the weight. Like I'm small,
Okay.
I'm considered 5'1", but because I'm so small, or rather I'm smaller in frame, right? If it's just 1 or 2 kilos, which is around like 5 pounds, right?
Right.
In US, it's noticeable on me. Okay,
Yeah.
on my frame, even though it's not a lot, right? And yeah, and because I'm sort of like 5'1", so I sort of look at the rest of the girls in the school like, oh my gosh, they're way prettier or they're way taller. So I always have this very crazy warped sense of perception, like thinking like I'm a lot bigger and taller, but actually
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not. Yeah, it's like those yeah, it's like I always think that I'm a lot taller and bigger, but actually I'm not. So so yeah, so growing up in a same-sex school just sort of, yeah, there's a lot of that um uh yeah, a lot of self-esteem thing, because they're all
Mhm.
girls, and you know how they're all coming of age, trying to look pretty, all trying to, there's physical changes and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I do admit, that I do feel like yeah, that self-esteem thing was affected a little bit. So at one point, I remember around like from between 13 to 16 years old, that coming of age, the important years, I
Mhm.
was considered overweight by the national healthcare standards for schools. So I was put into this club, literally called Tough Club, like FAT, but spelled the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it stands for Trim and Fit Club. So
Oh, and the idea was to become trim and fit.
yes, but that's fine, that's okay. I mean that's
Yeah.
okay. And then so they taught you, so we only have like around, I think it was around like 40 minutes of recess time.
Yeah.
And so girls in the Tough Club are not allowed to eat much during the recess time, because the old school mindset is, oh, you are fat or you're overweight because you're eating too much, you need to exercise more. But for me, it wasn't by choice, right? It was like I
Yeah.
have all this host of stuff, and I was not in that. I was in that spectrum whereby, we call it the in betweens. You're not
Yeah.
considered asthmatic, so doctor can issue you that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So, but going back to the school experience, it was because I was in the Tough Club. So during recess, I'm not allowed to eat. Instead, I have to join the other Tough Club girls. That's what we call it, to do like just like skipping 20 or 25 minutes of skipping. Now, the thing is that that's fine. The thing is that the location where the school chose for the Tough Club girls to be at is right in front of the canteen where the rest of the other girls are also having their recess. So can you imagine that little
Yeah.
it's in a way shaming, because the
Yeah.
rest of the girls will be looking like, oh my gosh, oh, this person in the Tough Club, that person in the Tough Club, so oh, like you can, sometimes you're not sure if people are actually talking about you, right?
Right.
Or maybe
They're
they are
standing
not,
there
right?
laughing, and you're feeling like they're laughing at me, or they're
Well,
pointing at
that's the
us.
thing. Yeah, I don't know if they're actually laughing, but how the voices in your head goes
Yeah.
about. Yeah, and it doesn't help also as well that during that time the teacher in charge of the Tough Club is, she's always yelling, so there's even more attention on the Tough
Oh.
Club girls. Yeah,
Oh,
and
the teacher
the teacher in charge.
who's in charge of the Tough Club.
Yes. So
Oh
she's
my
like,
gosh.
and then sometimes if she's in a bad mood, she'll be, yeah, calling us like not very good stuff. So it's but all is forgiven. It's just that, looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's
Well, it
I
is
do.
hard enough. Yeah, and doing like it is hard enough just being like raising children. I'm not a teacher per se, but I'm a parent, and it's like it's hard enough just even with common sense and good intentions and all of that for
Mm,
kids to grow up with healthy self-esteem and good habits and all that stuff. It's hard enough. But when there's choices made by the school that just are probably not the best way
right,
to address this,
right.
that makes it. And then
But
so, yeah, go ahead.
but I also think that, I mean, it's probably, I mean, not pointing fault at anyone. It is what it is during that time, and the teacher is of the generation where, the cane, or, the school of hard knocks is the way to really get the results that you want.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yeah, exactly. Right now it's different. Right now it's all about mental health. You've got to be careful what you say and all that stuff. I mean, there are merits to it as well, but sometimes you really need to find that sweet spot, that sweet balance. You can't be always cajoling everybody. Like if you are overweight because of some poor lifestyle habits, then clearly those poor lifestyle habits needs to be changed. In a truthful as well as in graceful way, both truth and grace.
Yeah. And then and then your relationship at 19 was an abusive relationship. This was your
first. Yes.
This was like a boyfriend or a.
Yeah. So I had my first relationship. It lasted 4 years. Just right into before I started. Well, almost. Let me think back a little bit. Memory lane for me here. So like right around the time when I was about to enter college, which is university here in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
So we started dating. He was a lot older than I am, so I guess I grew up in a way faster than the rest. Because and then I think I started university, and then we were hustling a lot in terms of creating our future as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then during the last couple of years, I guess things got really intense. I don't know, communication and stuff. I mean, I was young. I admit my part about being young and stubborn and maybe hot-tempered and all that stuff. And I mean, it always takes two to clap, right? And then,
but what was it? Was it verbal or physical or?
Well, it started sort of like it wasn't very much verbal. I think it was very repressive to begin with. I mean, not to begin with. It started off being kind of like repressive, and then gradually, I guess it got physical. Yeah, not I guess it did get physical.
Yeah.
Like each time we sort of quarreled, he would not be able to, like, after a while, like if you can't manage to resolve anything, and it's like a pressure cooker, right? And then you just explode, and then and then it got a little bit abusive, and after that, I think he got a shock in his own life, and then he started to threaten to kill himself. And, when he did that, I got into that shock mode of like, okay, Yan, you can't take care of your own feelings right now because this guy is threatening to kill himself.
Yeah.
And the last thing you want is to get that. So I had to shift aside my feelings and just hope that he doesn't do any crazy stuff.
Right. And that's the goal is of that behavior, is to manipulate you away from your own feelings and concerns.
I don't think he did it on purpose, to be honest.
I don't know that it's even on purpose. I think it's just like instincts when people feel threatened or feel powerless, or when people are not equipped with the skill set to manage their anger or their emotions or their frustrations and stuff like that. Yeah, so that went on for a bit, and then and then during that period of time, I think intuitively at 19, 18, around like 19, 20, around that time, I always said, like, I remember, like, I intuitively, I know that, okay, this relationship had to end because it's not bringing out the best in him, it's not bringing out the best in me, right.
But I just didn't know how to, figure out a way to let go and stuff like that. But I remember that time during the last 1 year or so, I always, like, our quarrels always have me saying these words, at the rate that we are quarreling, I won't be surprised that I'll get really, really sick. I kept saying this over and over again, like a broken record. At the rate that we're quarreling, I won't be surprised I'll get really, really sick. So around 6 to 8 months later, I decided that, you know what, I think we really need to end it because it's really going nowhere. So we ended it. And then like most young girls or women, once they get, once they, have a big break from the relationship, right, they channel all the energy into, keeping themselves fit and working on the
Yeah.
aesthetics as well as the emotional aspect. So I was eating clean. I was exercising more than usual. I was preparing actually for Asia's first women triathlon. And
Oh,
then
okay.
10 months, and then 10 months later at 23, that's when I found out I had cancer. And that was like, I wasn't shocked per se, but I think it was a mixed emotion because the first thing that came to my mind was like, holy crap, did I just curse myself? Like,
Right.
freak, like I'll be like, if I go around and tell people that, they'll be like, yeah, you're overthinking it. But I'm like,
Right.
no, people, I have been saying that to myself for nearly almost a year when I was dating.
Well,
At
and
the rate,
what kind of cancer
so I
were
had
you?
Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a
Oh,
form of
wow.
blood
Yeah.
cancer, was stage 3. And I was but yeah, so there was a mixed emotion because I remember the doctor saying, Yan, I have two news for you, the good and the bad. Which, what would you like to hear? I said, well, tell me the bad news. Bad news is, all right, you have lymphoma, Hodgkin's stage 3. And I say, what's the good news? He said, well, the good news is that this is one of the most treatable form of cancer.
Uh-huh.
All right. So I said, okay, cool. So what is your recommended course of action? Blah, blah, blah. So that's when, he told me and stuff like that. But yeah, the thing that came in my mind was like, oh my God, did I just curse myself?
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time in my life that I have this very, I wouldn't want to use the word spiritual awakening, but it's sort of like that feeling of that there are things beyond what we see or sense with
Yeah.
our 5 senses. And there's this
Hmm.
really strong, powerful, there's this very powerful force that lies in the words that we use and the thoughts that's in our head, even the emotions, right? The intent, the words that we say have so much power in bringing things to fruition. It's kind of scary when you think, scary in a
Yeah.
way, can you think about it? Yeah.
Well, because there's a lot that medicine doesn't know. I when I was 12, I was diagnosed with Crohn's
Mm,
disease, ileitis, which, is the digestive disease. And, all they knew about it, I mean, they knew a lot. They were with treatments and things, but they didn't. But as far as the cause goes, the only thing they could relate it to was there's some hereditary element to
mm,
it, and
mm.
it may be caused by stress, or it may be is certainly worsened by stress. And that was it. But once I heard that it was worsened by stress or caused by stress related, obviously as a young teenager, my first reaction was, okay, I have to minimize my stress. I didn't know what I was stressed about. I
Right.
was, but like, as you mentioned, at that age, 12, 13, 14, you're stressed about a lot.
Everything. Yeah.
Everything's
Yeah.
stressful. Everybody's depressed. Everything's stressful. Appearances certainly a big, part of it. I had the type of build where, like you, I was small, and any weight that I put on was going to be visible. And my
Right.
body type was kind of a huskier type anyway. So
Right.
I was not going to be like a rail thin person. I was never going to be like a really thin person. And so, and then with medication, I was on cortisone, prednisone,
Oh my
so that
gosh.
would make me, kind of
Balloon.
balloon, like abnormally so, where I just
Right.
looked very different from
Right.
myself. And that was just, so I can imagine, the teenager years, what that was kind of like. And then you had this this diagnosis. So it was treatable.
Well,
What was the
by the modern medicine. So I mean, there were two things that you mentioned that I would like to share my perspective. Like,
Yeah,
number one,
please.
you said what medicine said at that time about your Crohn's disease, that it's stress related. So there are two things I want to mention. One is medicine and one is stress. So like, listeners, I'm not saying that medicine is bad or not, not effective. There are, good traits to modern medicine. I want to also make that distinction. We are talking about modern medicine right now, because
Yeah.
way before, all this, I call it the modern medicine or Western medicine, you
Mhm.
have all the ancient, I call it the ancient or the traditional medicine where, they do the old school way, right?
Right.
Of course, people were living in the agriculture or even in the forest and shamanic, all that stuff. They have
Right.
those medicine, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Healing.
But yeah, exactly. And of course, we get most human beings doing that. I mean, as we progress, people get a little bit worried about like, oh my gosh, these are all witchcraft and all that stuff. And there are some, yes, there are some like powerful stuff happening out there, which I personally, I mean, I don't deal with all of that, but yeah, sometimes it can get a little bit like out of whack, so to speak. The
Yeah.
pros to the modern medicine, I would say though, is that it's highly precise. The tools are very, very high. That's where the tech comes in. They're very highly tech. They're very precise. They are designed for emergency medicine. So for
Right.
example, if someone gets into, my gosh, touch wood, if someone is involved in a major car crash, or basically a major accident,
Right.
and your main artery is burst, there's blood oozing out and stuff, you need emergency medicine to make sure
Mhm.
that it doesn't, the person stays alive in the
Yeah.
near split second. This is when modern medicine is so effective, so effective.
Mhm.
Unless you are so good at with herbalism and like what herbs to make immediately and just patch it on top. But I would say 9.5 out of 10 of regular folks like us, we don't know. That's when emergency medicine becomes, or rather, the modern medicine is really, really good at. And
Yeah, and they
talking
don't say when at the scene of a really terrible car accident, bring me my herb kit. We need an herb kit. They
yeah.
have a crash kit.
Yeah, they do it so that's one. And then now, I mean, after what I've observed, in so-called in the health industry for the last 15 years or so, I will also say that tools are getting more, the diagnostic tools are getting more precise, meaning to say that in the past, especially with the discovery of DNA,
Mhm.
there's a lot of toolkits that's revolving around, looking at the different parts of what the DNA does in our human body. I'm no expert in this, but
Mhm.
when I'm listening to experts, I start to understand where they're coming at. So yeah, diagnostic tools are getting more precise and perhaps even how do I say, more mainstream. That's why like we can get continuous glucose monitors in the pharmacy right now. In the early days, they can only get it through the
Yeah.
doctors. And
Yeah.
these are for people, with diabetes and stuff like that. And being precise also means that right now, tools are able to detect even the most minute, amount of so-called extra growth tissues, and tell you
Mhm.
that, your propensity and stuff like that. And, that's when the language as well as the empathy of your physician, of your doctor, becomes even more crucial. Just because the report shows something, it doesn't mean that you're going to die of it. We need to
Yeah.
monitor the changes in it. In the past, we're not able to detect, as well. And by the time they detect, it's probably too late, or
Mhm.
a bit too late. But now they're able to detect. So that's one. And the second one, we're talking about stress. So we're talking about, stress is such a buzzword even to this day.
Mhm.
So I learned this year, even as I'm learning, going back to my roots about learning about TCM and Qigong especially, I learned that there are two kinds of stress. You have the good stress and the bad stress, and the body needs both. Okay, the
Yeah.
issue here with diseases or illnesses is when we don't allow our body to remove or to release or to let go the negative stresses. That's
Yeah.
why early on I talk about repression. My ex there's a lot of repression. Even I was also repressing. Anything to do with repression, and you don't learn how to let go, mind, body, from the body, from the mind, from the spirit, or from the soul level, if you believe in all that stuff, that's when, the diseases will slowly start to manifest. So there are
Yeah.
good stress and bad stress. because you
Yeah.
need a good stress to, toughen up. That's how we grow muscles and
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah, we have to engage in, and that was when I first took a stress test. I didn't
Mhm.
understand what that even meant. I was like, oh, does it measure how much stress my like I can
Right.
go be under? And it's like, no, it's a physical stress test to see the boundaries of your capability,
Right.
your endurance, essentially.
Right. Which can be trained, by the way.
Yeah.
With go on.
No. So, okay. So you were being treated for
Mhm.
stage 3 cancer,
Right.
lymphoma,
Yeah. Right.
Hodgkin's,
Yes.
lymphoma.
Yeah.
And so how did that treatment go?
Well,
Um,
I always felt that it was just a big flu bug for me,
yeah,
and I just needed a very special and intense or a bit longer dose of so-called medicine.
right,
At that time, it didn't occur to me not to go for the treatment, also because I seek some advice, or rather opinions, of two of my best friends who are in the medical in the research field, and as
right,
well as other doctors. And they said that, because it's stage 3, it sort of spread, and the word here is because you're young, you go
hmm,
for it. And also, the truth is, at the time, honestly, I didn't feel sick at all. It was just lumps on
uh-huh,
my left neck area,
right,
this neck region area. I even remember asking the doctor, oh, can I finish my triathlon, and then we start the treatment? And the doctor was sort of advising no. And a friend of mine was also sort of saying, like, Yan, do you know how the lymphatic system works? Do you know what is lymphoma? Do you know that, like, if you delay, right now is stage 3, if you delay, let's say a month later, it might spread right into, your bone marrow, and that's stage 1. That's
right,
not what we want. I was like, really, that fast, in a month's time? They say, yeah, because that's how it works. It can really
yeah,
spread really fast. So I was
yeah,
like, oh, all right then. But I was like, I felt fit. No one would even imagine that I
yeah,
am I had cancer, like my hair was too full. I had no high fevers, nothing of that sort. I mean, lost a bit of weight only because I was training for a triathlon.
right,
But other than that, I felt great. So yeah, so it was just 6 months of intense chemo every 2 weeks, 4 bags full of drugs, and only just during the middle of the treatment that it became a little bit like naturally your immune system takes
yeah,
a bit of a hit in during the middle, because that's like, it's like, oh my gosh, every 2 weeks you're just like taking in a lot. So usually 1 or 2 days after the treatment, I was a little bit fatigued and a bit more susceptible to like ulcers and stuff like that.
hmm,
But other than that, I bounced back pretty quickly. And I really feel it's because of my age.
yeah,
Like going in and out of the hospital during that time for the treatment, I was looking around like, oh my gosh, most of them are way older than I am,
yeah,
and some of them are terminal. And even the ones who are so terminal, they are so, I tell you, Hersh, like, whenever I look back, I always am grateful for life in general.
yeah,
People always say that we only have one life, and we die once. I would actually, say that we die once, but we actually get to live many times. If you think about it, every day when you wake
yeah,
up, that's a new day to live. But when
yeah,
you die. That's it. Your
yeah.
heart stops. That's it. You don't get another chance to live again.
Yeah,
So
and that is the part that, well, as a young person, we don't often think about that. And
mm,
that's probably to our benefit, in the sense that when we do get sick and we are combating something, we don't even often accept that mortality is an
yeah, I
option,
mean, I would say, yeah, maybe with the younger, so-called the younger folks, because they haven't lived life long enough. But I would also say for people who are, I won't. Okay, that's the thing. I don't want to put a number to a person's age, but if you talk about the number of footprints they have in on Earth, the older,
Steps.
so
Yeah. How
the
many
steps they
words?
have.
How many
I was-
words do we have? How many
Yes,
steps do we have?
yeah.
Right.
But I would say that it's not so much about, you know, them being younger and therefore less afraid or death. I mean, like thinking about, sorry, what we were talking about, being young and
Resilient.
yeah, being
and,
resilient. I would also think that, you know, the older ones would also, the older folks will also start to see, like, how should I say, they, not many of the older folks have the revelation as well as the wisdom to appreciate what they have,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. The appreciation of that we get to live many times.
Well,
Many times.
when you emerged on the other side of the cancer, it sounds like you had the resolve to go to, you know, competitive bodybuilding.
But that was
right?
by accident, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was really not by intention. I'm not, I don't feel like I'm competitive in nature. You know, it was,
Yeah.
that only began because right after I finished my chemo, I just thought, you know what, let me just get back into a better shape physically. You know, I sort of missed the gym because before I had cancer, I was starting to go to the gym a little bit.
Right.
Lifting weights, and then after cancer I thought, you know, why not continue lifting a bit, you know, continue like proper, you know, like lifting some weights. And I guess that little bit about being the same-sex school and growing up in a, you know, in an environment, it's so funny. I grew up in school, it's all girls, and then at home it's all boys.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I sort of, you know, felt like wanting to feel kind of like strong. So I started learning about, you know, all the weightlifting things like squats and deadlifts and you name it. And in a way, I also wanted to debunk the myth of, you know, muscles on women. I wanted to debunk the myth of like, oh, you know, if women were to lift heavy weights, then we would look like Hulk Hogan or, you know, The Rock or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But sorry, The Rock didn't really exist at that time. At that time was Hulk
Yeah.
Hogan. Yeah. So I did that. I got to know some bodybuilders, national bodybuilders as well. And I started learning how to eat the way how they do and stuff like that. Minus it's a known fact. They take competitive bodybuilders,
Steroids.
they take steroids. I don't
Yeah.
take it. You know? They wanted to offer me, but I was like, nah, this is where I draw the line. This is yeah, it was like, whoa, another woe for me, by the way. You know, like seriously, it was a woe for me. But I was like, all I want to do is I just wanted to eat clean, so-called cleaner. No trash food, no trash food. I just wanted to be strong at the gym, lift well. Sort of also give myself a mini challenge of just want to see when women would lift heavy weights. Like I was lifting about twice my weight at one point, and I wasn't bulky. I mean, I had more muscles for sure, but I wasn't like, you know, like bulky. And I wanted to see if, you know, I could look like the women on the cover of those fitness, you know, magazines, those fitness models. And that's when I realized that, oh my gosh, it's all marketing. Whatever it is, you know, like I had this understanding to realize that I was on that mission during that time to let people, like, to tell the women of all ages to see that, you know, whatever you see on these magazines, I'm telling you, they do this full time. If you're not doing this full time, it's almost kind of not realistic for you to get that kind of figure. That's one. Number two, even if you can get that figure, do you know how much sacrifices they have to make? Are you willing to make those sacrifices, especially on the social aspect? If you can't, then you need to adjust your perception. You need to adjust something deeper, you know, like, why do you want to get this, you know, figure? Is it because of insecurity, you know, going back to the whole self-esteem thing? Yeah, so that's my personal story as well as what I observe. So one thing lead to another, and that's where the competition came in, because one day the boys in the gym, I call it, just go like, Yan, you really look like you're ready for competition. I'm like, what competition? So I don't know, everything just sort of lined up, and I just thought, why not? Since I'm really there, just give it a go and try.
Yeah, and you seem to have a good attitude about that stuff, not from the competitive point of view, but sometimes it's when you have a healthy attitude about competition, that's a good way to approach competition, because you're in that, but you're not unhealthy about it, desperate.
Right.
Probably your self-image at that point was probably pretty healthy. Do you think?
No. Okay, the truth is, to be honest with you, I do have my moments and struggles. I mean, come on, it is a real world in a sense. You know, you are
Yes, yeah.
literally wearing, I always say, I'm literally wearing two-piece, which I almost never do, in public, being judged for the
Yeah.
way how you look. If anything, it's like, oh yeah, I remember I also give myself a little mental challenge, like, you know what, Yan, if you can wear two-piece, stand on stage and be judged, what else can you not overcome?
What else can you? Yeah, right. Okay.
You know, I mean,
So,
it's just, for me, it's sort of like a mental talk to myself. So
how did
but
the
I was
challenge, how did it
Hmm?
play out for you?
So there were 4 competitors and I came in last. I came in fourth. Did it affected me? Oh yeah, for sure, because I put in so much hard work, like all competitors do. But at the end of the day, I guess, you know, competition judging is a very perception thing, and
Mhm.
also based on like who knows who, you know, connections and stuff like that. It's
Oh,
the
okay.
real business world, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that. And um, well, yeah, so I did suffer a bit of what I call post-competition blues.
Right.
You know, definitely. I know all competitors, all athletes definitely probably feel that more, the pressure to, I mean, I don't even consider myself a competitive athlete, but I just imagine the amount of, you know, mental stress, the
Yeah.
go, you know, especially the higher they are at the top, how much mental focus they need to be at that to maintain that, especially if they have brand sponsorships, right? Managers, right? It all becomes a business, you know, sports, entertainment, you name it. It all becomes, you know, business at that time. I don't know about now, you know, because you know, I definitely for the next 5 years or so, sometimes I do ask myself, would I go back to competition? At that time, I still kept it. And about 5, 6 years later, I literally hang out my heels, throw them away. And I was like, you know what, Yan, be honest with yourself. You won't want to go through that, because it's I don't know, it's just sort of like meaningless for me at the time. You know, life changes,
Yeah.
you know, pivots and turns. That's kind of like the major theme of my life. Always making pivots and turns, taking that.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where pivotal healer comes
Well, the
from.
pivotal healer came
Because
about because
pivotal is a different, like pivotal would be like a real momentous kind of
Well, yeah,
change or
look,
turn, but
yeah, look,
pivoting away from, you know, saying, oh, well, you
right.
know, it's not my dream anymore. My
No,
dream
no.
isn't.
So the pivotal healer came about, yes, from the first definition that you share, but it's also inspired by a client of mine. I was very surprised. She sent on New Year's Day, she sent a, you know, a New Year's message to me, and she used the term, you know, like, thank you so much for all that you have done for my health. You know, over the last X number of years, you have been very pivotal in
Uh-huh.
my journey. And that's when I was like, oh wow, okay, I never knew that that's how, you know, she sees me. And I just thought, yeah. And then now I'm stepping into the podcast space, and sort of, you know, want to find a way to position and brand myself, so to speak. So I thought, why not just use pivotal healer? And the last I heard, by the way, Hersh, pivotal seems to be the new buzzword these days. Is that
Oh,
right?
really?
I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, because you're in the business world. So I
Well,
did.
it can be. I think, you know, post pandemic, I think a lot of people have made drastic changes in their life, in their career. You know, people who were like, well, if I don't want to do something, you know, in my career, I'm not just not going to, you know, I don't need what, life's too short. So I
Right.
think the life's too short concept has been
Mm,
gaining momentum because we've been facing that reality. Um, you know, and this will, I want to get to the spiritual journey, you
mm,
know, um,
mm.
but quickly, if you would, because I'm
Okay.
curious, speaking of pivoting, you pivoted into tech, e-commerce,
Right.
you know, and then you say that you dealt with a lot of burnout as a
Yeah.
result of that. That was that was at, that was at 29, right? That you closed.
Yeah, my business.
You closed that business.
Yeah, that was it
So
was a pretty major burnout. That's right.
so what do you think the burnout was attributable to?
Wow. Well, first of all, the business was a fruition from my relationship with my ex-boyfriend. So
Oh,
I
okay.
think hanging on to the business was a lot of emotional baggage, truthfully.
Okay.
And then secondly was well, monetary, and then thirdly was, it's just, it became, I didn't find meaning in that. I was doing retail in the luxury market, and I just felt that there was no meaning in that. So yeah, so I made that pivot, and the pivot at that time, I mean, the choice at that time was between fitness and teaching, actually childcare teaching.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, and I asked my friends for their opinion, and they just meant go for the fitness, because they're like, Yan,
Uh-huh.
you have your cancer story. So they're thinking from the marketing point of view. You have a
Right.
cancer story,
Yeah.
you look great, you love the gym, and you are active, which, by the way, I wasn't, like, remember early on I said I didn't have an active childhood until I became completely so-called healed from all this childhood
Uh-huh.
malaise. And it
Okay.
was only
Yeah.
at 18, around 18, 17, 18, that I discovered something about, wow, oh my gosh, I suddenly realized that my body could move the way how I wanted to move. And
Mhm.
that really, that really sparked. I call myself a late bloomer when it comes to movement, exercise, sports, and stuff
Right.
like that. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, so at that time, my friends, like age 29, my friend was like, yeah, don't waste your time, just go into fitness. I said, oh, okay. So I got my certification in personal training, and then yeah, journey on in the next
Yeah.
8 years or so. And then yeah.
Well, now we're at the baptism,
Right.
the spiritual kind of, you say, I was on fire for God.
Yes, I wrote that Fire on God. So around, it's interesting because if I'm not wrong, am I wrong? Am I right to say that say Jesus died at the age of 33? Is that right? Do you know about
Are
that?
you right? Yeah. Well, according to you. Yeah,
Oh,
according to
okay.
what your bio said, that it was
No. As
baptized.
in, no, as in, I thought I read somewhere that they said that Jesus died at age
Oh, did
33.
Jesus die at
Yeah,
33?
not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
But
No, I think so. I think that is the
yeah, so anyway, why I mentioned this was because it was around the age of 33, all right, that I had this, yeah, I don't know why. I just felt like, you know what, I want to go to the States.
right.
I've always wanted to go to the States. Before that, I've traveled on this part of the planet, which is like Asia countries. I went to India as well. I
Right.
went to Switzerland and Italy right after I finished my chemo, but I just haven't been to the west side. So around age 32, 33, yeah, I sort of felt like, you know what, I want to go to the States. So I did that. And then I came back from the States, and then a friend of mine just sort of decided to catch up with me. And for some reason, I just said, okay. And we met at her church. And yeah, and I just, I don't know what drew me in that church at that time, but a lot of the things that the pastors were preaching at that time in the sermons just spoke right into me. And then within
Mhm.
8 months, I just said yes. I just decided to receive Christ at age
So
33.
how did it change your life on
Thanks
a
so much for
day-to-day
tuning into Truth Tastes Funny.
During that
basis?
If you
time,
enjoyed the
wow,
experience,
there was a lot
please leave a
of
5-star review and
I
share
think
this
I think for
podcast
me it
with
was
your
more
friends.
a lot more inward, in the sense that, number one, definitely a lot of renewal of the mind. Okay,
Yeah.
I definitely released a lot more of so-called those childhood wounds, those inner critics that I used to have, like fear. You won't believe it. I had fear of success. I had fear of failure as well, but mostly
Yeah.
the fear of success.
Yeah.
Yeah. I learned deeply about the meaning of forgiveness, forgiveness from the heart. I learned a lot about that. I was and it's kind of surreal as well, because it's also like, earlier on I talk about the power of words, and how, and in every church your leader will always encourage them, are asked to actually be involved in at least one, or that one ministry, right? And I didn't know which ministry to go to, and he's like, Yan, just take your time. The Lord will speak to you, when you start praying. So I won't say I kept praying. I just prayed and just like move around different ministries. And guess what? Which ministry spoke right into my heart? It's not glam. The most glamorous ministry is those like the worship ministry, right? That's like the most glamorous, right? Like you're always on stage and stuff like that. But the one that, and I actually tried to go into that ministry. I don't mind as well, because praise and worship is kind of fun. But the one ministry that spoke right into my heart, like you could really feel that tingles. We call it the spirit-filled moment, right? Is the ministry of intercessory prayer. And all you do is just pray and pray and pray, whether is it in tongues, whether it's in tongues or just reading scriptures and stuff like that. And and then everything just connects, because I was like, wow, the power of words, and how that ministry just drew me into it as well. So but
the trappings of it were not, it wasn't fancy, or it wasn't big. You were saying that you think of the the kind of the more grand glamorous.
Oh yeah, because in this particular, I don't know how different churches, well, I don't grow up in a Christian household, so I don't know how different churches do in Singapore, or in other cultures as well. But for me, during that time, whenever it's once a week, we gather in like in an AV room, and then and then there will be like just very simple acoustic music, or maybe sometimes even no music at all, and you just start praying and going into that, we call it into that. I don't know how to explain those words anymore. Sometimes.
Well, they used to. What's interesting is in some religions and cultures, they refer to it as going to church, as the experience going to church. Now, you said you're not really affiliated.
Right. Yes, I'm not. So part of it was because at one point so for me, this is just me sharing. I'm not against any so-called faith. I think faith plays a tremendous role in our health, especially in our health resiliency, in building our immunity as well. Even if you're not a churchgoer, that's totally fine. That's okay. There's no judgment here. I'm not here to judge anyone. But at the end of the day, it's all about building that church in us, or rather that sanctuary in our heart. Right. So I'm not affiliated to any so-called any particular church. I guess, I don't know. I just felt like I couldn't get a lot of answers about life beyond, either life living on earth or in the world, as well as beyond it. Because during that time, I just felt like there's a lot of like, oh my gosh, you sort of like, there's a lot of too many like do's and don'ts, to the point whereby there are a lot of questions beyond outside what is going on, all false, and I don't, and so I was like, you know what, I love the Bible. I think the Bible is one of the most life-giving words as well. Like some days I do turn to the Bible, some days I turn to like the non-Bible, non-Christian books as well. Sometimes I turn to so-called personal development books as well, that kind of stuff. So lately I'm reading more into the TCM stuff as well, a bit of Buddhism, that kind of stuff. So so I'm not really like affiliated, but I still keep the, I call it the teachings of Christ, right? Like knowing when to surrender, knowing when to take charge is part of it. I mean, I like some of the parables and the stories and the deep stories as well.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no theologian, I'm no historian, so I can't be, I can't, I'm not in the position to be drawing, connections. But yeah, in
Yeah.
that church during that time, there was also like the Chinese ministries, and it's pretty fascinating because they were even showing us how during ancient China, like we're talking about super ancient China, how they saw God in ancient China as well. Like I was like, wow, yeah, it was it's very amazing.
Well, how
So
does it influence the work you do now?
right.
Circling
So
back around to
yeah, sorry,
where
I
you
took you,
are.
I took you a little bit like up to the clouds, right? Now
Well,
we're
that's what
coming
I
back.
wanted to do with this, actually. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry, your question is, so how does all of that, how does my spiritual journey influence me? I would say that it gives me a lot more wisdom to be
Yeah.
intentional in every word, move, act, behavior whenever I enter a space
Yeah.
with my client, whether it's virtually or physically. Yeah, I became more intentional, and I come with a bit more of literally that feeling is I am more than enough. I come as I am with the intent to heal wherever you are right here, right now. And
Right.
it's also helping me, as well. And of course, sometimes if it became a topic that my clients are open to talk about, then I will share as well. Because
Yeah.
you may never know how that might help someone to connect something even deeper. Because the truth is, I'm pretty sure, especially since COVID, as you mentioned, right? The truth is, I'm pretty sure everyone felt like, what is life other than, like there must be more to life than just work and work and work, than
Yeah.
just consume and consume and consume and consume, right? We are still living in a very consumeristic consumerism like culture. There's definitely more to that. There's something beyond the physical, so-called the physical realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that there are so many things right now that are pointing beyond the limits of the physical realm, out of almost a necessity. We look at the state of the planet. We look at the climate situation. We look at so the livability of our planet, is an issue that's in the short term, in the what would be considered in the in the immediate term, in the big picture. It's something we have to be aware of. Then there's the virtual world in which we can possibly exist, right? So you look at things where you talk about the idea of uploading yourself to a third dimension, another dimension, right?
Right.
To a virtual existence.
Right.
Okay, well, that's also kind of realistic in the in the sense. And then there's the thing of the pandemic and things like that, where we were like, okay, we were faced with people dying suddenly from a pandemic that we didn't exist to us a couple of months before, and then we're now and then we were facing that. So that existential threat existed, and that it could have as practical an impact as, do I really want to do this job every day?
Well, but yeah, there's a lot of changes, definitely. I'm not saying that all of us should just quit our jobs and we're just not going to do anything.
Right.
The world still needs to keep moving. But I think,
well, yeah,
that's why, going back early on when you asked me that question, how does that change? I would say that, bring that intent, not just awareness, but also being more conscious about, what you are doing, how you are, your presence, your very present moment right now, how you are. And that that is something that it's like money just come by. You know, when you are with when you're with, let's say right now, when we are talking, are we really, really here? When you're with your children, your child, are you really, really there with the person? Are you here, physically here, but mentally, emotionally, you're somewhere else? You know, that kind of stuff. And that is something that would also help us to heal tremendously. You know, a lot of diseases happen because there's so much disconnect. And then we think we're connecting, but we're actually not connecting as well. Right? Like I know a lot of people I don't know about, actually, no, I don't want to say a lot of people. I know that some people build relationships mostly on text. I'm like, what kind of relationship is that? That you can only be yourself via text. And then when you meet the person when you meet the person in person, in reality, it becomes very awkward. It becomes different. You know, that's odd. That's odd, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like our devices become the mask, right?
Well,
the mask.
And that's one of the things I love about podcasting is that we are kind of taking off the mask, hopefully, in a lot of these conversations. Whereas if you look at social media, you look at, you know, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, those are performance based.
Right.
It's not, I mean, you know, and yes, we're sharing some of ourselves, you know, you could actually be uninhibited in a way in TikTok, and that maybe that lack of inhibition is somehow a truth on some level, a real relatable thing. But really, mostly Instagram pictures, videos, things like that, we're trying to present a masked image.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned this, because I do, I mean, like for years, and I'm still exploring, like this is me being who I am right now. I'm still exploring to find that sweet spot about being 100% authentic to myself, right? At the same time, also having the algorithm to pick it up. So it's a very it's a balance. And I know that I'm sure you struggle. I'm not struggle. I'm sure you also face that as well.
Yeah.
Like, how do you put your real content out there, but then still have that, you know, that connection, that real connection that we really want to have, you know?
Yeah. And I think as I've done the podcasting thing over the last year, what's changed in me is that I have a different relationship with entertainment now. I was a stand-up comedian at that time. That was my focus. I was still working, you know, in advertising and copywriting, but I was a stand-up comedian that had been out and on the road. I mean, I wasn't not up to that very point, because I moved to the Midwest. I had been living in Los Angeles, and when I was living there, I was doing more stand-up comedy. I did less and less as the last 5 years have gone by. But I think that the podcasting opened my eyes in a way to conversations that were much less about being funny. So that, you know, it really, you know, it changed the complexion of what I thought was important. Because you know, I used to write a lot of fiction. I used to perform a lot of stand-up comedy, which is somewhere between fiction, entertainment, reality, and then I used to act and do a lot of write screenplays and do movies and things like that, where those things now feel less important to me. I love them. I love the medium of film, and I love all of that, but I just feel much more connected to this kind of intimate, real, hopefully on some level impactful. You know, when I started seeing an impact of the podcasts, that was great, because I was like, wow, I'm hearing from people who've been on the show and people who are listening to the show and watching it on YouTube that they actually are enjoying it. And that was really like, oh, okay. You know, whereas when you're doing stand-up, the audience is there that night and you're there that in that moment, but you don't know what, other than the laughter,
Right.
you don't
You
really
can't
know
predict
what
that.
right? Either the
Yeah.
joke lands or it doesn't. And that's what you're going for as a comedian, at least for me.
Wow.
I was like, did the joke land? If they laughed, if the crowd as in unison laughed, it worked. It was good.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
in a podcast, you don't know what people are going to react until they listen to it, until they hear it. It's existing there for, like the way it works with podcasting is you get more downloads as time goes by. And as time goes by, now I when I started, I had 5 episodes that I launched on Apple, right? Yet a couple days ago, I launched my 70th episode, which means there's now, from Truth Tastes Funny alone, from this show alone, there's 70 episodes. And every time I put a new one out, more people download the old one. So, so you're really getting much more exposure every time. And that grows. And that's really interesting, because it means that impact and those conversations and all of these things we share are having some kind of life, and you don't even think about, like you mentioned, millions. My stuff hasn't been, I don't think, heard by millions. It's been heard by, I would say, tens of thousands, right? I know, at least, let's say all the shows are getting 50, like let's say 50,000 listens have, when you cross that point, you go, okay, that's, some of those people are the same, right? But, some of them have listened to 50 episodes, but if 1,000 people listen to 50 episodes, right, that's a lot. That feels like a lot. So when you hit that threshold, you're like, okay, this is like growing in a way that I really feel is more impactful than the stand-up was.
Right.
Right.
I love that you share. Yeah. I love that you share the story.
Doing stand-up.
I really love this story. I really love this. Sorry, I love this story because no, sorry. Yeah. I really
go
love
ahead.
this.
I want to hear what you were saying.
Yeah, I really love this story because it's inspiring me to remind me, as well as any other listeners listening out there, is that, like what Hersh just shared, right? Like when he first started, it's only 5. And probably only 5 listeners, maybe less than that.
Probably, yeah.
And after just only a year, it's just only a year. A year passed by so fast, right? After a year, he said he had 70 episodes and probably 10 of thousands. It goes to show that at the start, it's always, always, I won't say the toughest, but it's always like you can't see it. But as long as you stay consistent and you believe, I wouldn't say believe, you sort of stay consistent, you believe, you pivot if you need to, let it go, be in the present moment more, and just let it flow. And eventually something will click, something will align as well, and we talk about spirituality earlier on. I mean, something that came to my mind, I know our time is running short a little bit, but I really felt like I really wanted to share this, is because when you asked me earlier on, like what is that one or two things about my spiritual journey that, helped me to be who I am today with my clients, right? Is this whole manifest thing, this whole rest, digest, manifest thing, that it came as a newfound or a renewed found discovery that I had, this year, this year in particular. When I went to the US for the first time in 2016, I was in that flow state. And I remember during that time walking along the beach in Singapore, I had this, we talk about spiritual awakening. Okay. I had this spiritual awakening moment whereby during around 4 or 5 p.m., when I was walking along the beach, it was windy. It was sort of about sun's about to get ready to set, but it's still bright because here the sun sets at 7, right? But it was really nice, orangey, and had this, so I was still awake. When you're sleeping, it's called a dream. When you're awake, it's called vision. Okay, so I had this vision where, I tell you, it's like you're in a movie. I still remember it vividly. I was walking and all of a sudden I felt boom. It's like all of a sudden the environment around me just changed. you know,
Wow.
like I could tell that I'm physically still in Singapore, in on Earth, but I could
Mhm.
feel like I'm being transported to a different space. But it's still
Wow.
like a space, like I don't know if it's, yeah, I don't know if it's Venice Beach or whatever it is, but I'm telling you that feeling was like,
Yeah.
wow. It was just like that for I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, and I was walking, I was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to be in the US someday. And then I totally forgot about it. And then a couple of months later, I found myself in the US, and I was like, holy crap, I think I manifested it. So
Yeah.
that period of time, my spiritual journey was, by the way, spiritual journey is never linear. It's spiral. It goes ups and downs.
Yeah.
I could feel like right now I'm spiritually down because of whatever thing, or there's no because, sometimes it is what it is. I just have to continue the practice, and then, sometimes you hit another breakthrough or another,
Yeah.
warm up. Yeah. And then, yeah, so that's like one thing about the spiritual awakening part when it comes to me feeling understanding this whole term about manifest. Because I know manifest is a buzzword these days in so-called the
Mhm.
spiritual world
Yeah.
right now. But manifestation, it's more than just woo-woo spiritual stuff.
Mhm.
Because there's also what I call the rest and digest state, which is a very scientific physical state. Okay, in order to get into the manifest state, in order to so-called will or get what you want in life, you have to allow your body, or rather it's good to let our body to be more in what I call, or what the scientific will call, the rest state. Because when you
Yeah.
rest, you get into the parasympathetic mode more, you get to digest better. You're less, hustling and rushing all the time. And then you take more aligned or intuitive actions, and that's when the manifestation comes in, sometimes almost as quickly as you want.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm still, I found this this term, rest digest manifest, is probably not a new term. I call it downloads from source, or from universe, or from God.
Yeah.
And when I had the revelation, I was like, holy crap, Yan, wow, that's like, sometimes I laugh at myself, like, how does that even come in? I was like, I don't know, I don't know how that terms
Right.
comes into
Right.
place. So I'm still going through, like, for me, I always want to be 100% authentic as much as I can, to the best I can. And yeah, listeners out there, I am who I am right now. Yan, I call myself Yan version 5, still, practicing, cultivating what I call my rest, digest, manifest practices. I always say I'm a human being. I have my, weaknesses, my blind spots. I'm no God, no Jesus, but this is, like I said, this is, I come as I am.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.